Welcome to Lesson 1, where we will be discussing Learning Outcome 1, Learning Outcome 2, Learning Outcome 3, Learning Outcome 4, Learning Outcome 5. We will be starting with Learning Outcome 1, which discusses the outcomes-based approach. Outcomes-based education and training can be defined as a learner-centered approach to education and training that is primarily characterized by a focus on results and outputs opposed to syllabi and curricula. An outcome is anything you can show that you know or that you can do, such as baking a cake, fixing a car, knowing how to make decisions, and even the ability to solve problems. An exit level outcome refers to capabilities or competencies that the learner should be able to demonstrate in order to obtain a qualification. This includes knowledge and understanding, cognitive skills, practical skills, applied skills, knowledge, competence, and values. Specific outcomes or learning outcomes refer to the skills, knowledge, attitudes, and understanding required in a particular context. It is derived from critical outcomes and is called specific because it relates to specific areas of learning. Critical cross-field outcomes refer to those generic outcomes that inform all teaching and learning. For example, they may include working effectively, working well as a team within a team, collecting, analyzing, and organizing information. Principles of outcomes-based education include learning and assessments which are geared towards outcomes, continuous formative assessments that support learning, and learning methods which are learner-centered. Recognition for prior learning means any learning, skills, and knowledge that the learner has acquired through formal education and training programs, in-house and on-the-job training, as well as on-the-job experience acquired through working. The purpose of RPL is to compare previous learning experience against specified learning outcomes that are required to award credits for a particular qualification or unit standard. The benefits of recognition for prior learning is that the learner can be declared competent and obtain credits for a unit standard or qualification based on previous learning and experience without studying the whole unit standard or qualification. The core approach to outcomes-based education is focused towards the learner. This requires a paradigm shift in the learning approach that was traditionally syllabus-orientated and content-based. In content-based education, teachers transmit information to passive students. However, in outcomes-based education, teachers are seen as facilitators of meaningful learning. The focus is on the knowledge of facts in content-based education, whereas in outcomes-based education, the focus is on application of both knowledge and skill and outcomes to be achieved. Now let's have a look at assessment. This is the process in which evidence is gathered and evaluated against agreed criteria in order to make a valid judgment of competence against the learner's ability and skill. The main purpose of assessment is to determine whether the learner is competent or not yet competent. Competence is the ability to perform whole work roles to the standards expected in employment in a real working environment. In outcomes-based education, assessments are done by the assessor who judges the evidence collected or demonstrated by the learner in order to determine whether the learner is competent or not. Applied competence is a combination of practical competence, foundational competence, and reflective competence. Competence is the ability to integrate understanding of knowledge and performance. In order to evaluate a learner's competence, we have to first identify the assessment categories. Assessment categories are divided into two: two main categories, which is first formative assessment. This is an ongoing assessment that is conducted during the learning process. And the next one is summative assessment, and this is usually completed at the end of the learning program. Then we have assessment categories. And the first one is an integrated assessment. This is done by using a variety of assessment instruments in order to assess a learner's competence. And the other one would be the diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic assessment is aimed at assisting the learner to identify training gaps in knowledge and skill in the demonstration of their current competencies. After we have established the assessment type and the assessment categories, we're now moving towards the assessment instruments. There are a variety of assessment instruments, of which we will be discussing only two. The one is a portfolio of evidence, which is really a collection of the learner's day-to-day activities and information that provides evidence towards the learner's competence. Then the next one is a simulation or observation, and simulations are usually done in situations where it is difficult to execute an assessment of the learner's ability in a real working environment. So it's usually done through role plays or creating a simulated environment. Role plays in the assessment process include learners whose responsibility is to collect evidence to demonstrate the applied competence. The assessor's responsibility is to plan the assessment, design the assessment, and prepare the candidate for assessment, and conduct valid judgment on evidence. Then next we have the internal moderator, and the training provider usually appoints an internal moderator to audit the learning process to ensure that the assessment process was conducted in a fair and valid manner. And the following role player is the external moderator. So the external moderator is also known as the verifier, audits the learning process of the provider, but from a sector education and training authority perspective, the SETA's perspective, in other words.